One of the most insidious types of employment discrimination in the state of California is pregnancy discrimination. How do you know if you're a victim? And what should you do if you are? We're going to unpack and answer all of those questions in this video. We're first going to take a look at California law. What does it say about pregnancy discrimination and harassment? We're then going to take a look at the common violations that employment lawyers like myself see and pursue on a daily basis. And finally, we'll examine what you should do about it if you are a victim. And we'll take a look at the financial implications, the economic remedies that you can recover if you successfully win your pregnancy discrimination lawsuit. When describing the rules that surround pregnant employees, California law is broken up into three main categories. The first is maternity leave, and that's the FMLA, CFRA rules that allot 12 weeks of leave for most employees in the state of California. And the second general area is pregnancy disability leave. That's where a woman has become disabled due to her pregnancy. So say her doctor put her on bed rest, or she had preeclampsia and had to take certain time off, or she has postpartum depression after the birth of the child and needs to take a leave of absence due to that. That law lets you take additional time beyond the traditional 12 weeks that are allotted by FMLA or CFRA. Those two areas of law are huge in general and broad, and they apply to a lot more people than you might think. I've made an entire video just about those two laws. This video primarily is dealing with discrimination. That's where a woman is treated poorly or terminated due to her pregnancy. Specifically, the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, section 12940, subsection A, says that it is an unlawful employment practice for any employer to take an adverse employment action against a woman due to her sex. Sex is later defined to include pregnancy and related medical conditions. So an employer can't fire you because of your pregnancy. They can't refuse to hire you because of your pregnancy. And later on, it is enumerated that you can't harass a woman because of her sex or pregnancy. So you can't create an abusive working environment. You can't insult or harass a woman because of her pregnancy. This is the general description of the law. So now let's look at some common violations. Employment lawyers like myself see a lot of different types of cases, but the ones we see most frequently are right here. First is a refusal to hire a pregnant employee. When a woman is showing, it's almost impossible for her to get hired at a good job. And when they don't get hired, it's very difficult to prove that it was due to their pregnancy. So if you're going to bring a case like this to a lawyer or the DFEH, you need to have some good evidence to indicate that it was motivated, the refusal to hire was motivated by your pregnancy. We often see cases where a woman is written up, reprimanded, and then fired before she goes on maternity leave, before her leave of absence. Those are very common. Also, extremely common is the glass ceiling case, where a woman comes back from maternity leave or throughout her pregnancy, she was due for promotion and no more promotions, no more advancement in the company. And usually we find that's motivated because the employer, manager, CEO, or whoever doesn't believe that the female is going to be able to keep up because of her obligations to her young child. We often see, and these are often the worst types of cases, when a woman is fired either immediately after her maternity leave or leave of absence or soon after her maternity leave. Those cases generally get the jury really angry. We often see cases where, especially among less sophisticated employers and really smaller companies, where a woman is denied her right to take maternity leave or pregnancy disability leave. Now, not all employers, that law, the FMLA, PDL, doesn't apply to all employers. So don't just automatically assume that the law has been broken if your FMLA, your maternity leave, is denied. Definitely call a lawyer about that. We often see cases where a woman suddenly is being set up to fail, that they're being harassed, they're being called names, they're being treated very poorly, and there's no possible way they can meet the expectations of the employer. But those expectations weren't created until after the employee told the employer that she was pregnant. So she's being harassed in order to get her to quit before she goes on her maternity leave. Very common scenario. Now, we often tell people, don't quit. If the employer is treating you poorly and you don't have any other options, stay there, because it's much better to file a lawsuit if you've been fired than if you voluntarily quit. We often see cases where a woman comes back from maternity leave and is suddenly fired due to absenteeism. It sounds ridiculous, but they often come up with reasons to fire a woman that revolve around her time off due to caring, going to pediatrician appointments, going to her own OBGYN or doctor appointments after the birth of a child. We also see cases where a woman is fired because the employer, and usually typically a male manager, fires the woman because he is worried about her future time off to care for her baby or for herself. These are very common cases that employment lawyers like myself pursue on a regular basis. If you believe you're a victim of pregnancy discrimination, what should you do? Well, there's three things. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the vast majority of women do nothing. They don't file a case, they don't call a lawyer. And I understand why. They've got a young baby at home and they don't want to get involved in a messy lawsuit. Unfortunately, it's not a good option. And the reason is this. That manager, HR representative, or CEO who decided to fire you or not hire you will do it again and again and again until somebody holds them accountable. So it might as well be you. Secondarily, some women decide to contact the DFEH, the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, or the federal equivalent, the EEOC. Unfortunately, those agencies have so many cases and so few lawyers and are so under budget that they can't possibly pursue all the claims that come their way. And they often usually just send the employee a right to sue letter, and then they have to go contact a lawyer anyway. So generally, we recommend that if you feel like you have a case, contact a private employment lawyer. The consultations are almost always free, so it usually doesn't cost you anything. And you're going to learn about what your case, what you might be able to recover. Typically, you can recover three things. Number one is your economic damages. If you were making $75,000 a year and then you were fired, you're not making $75,000 a year anymore. That's a very tangible economic loss that a jury can measure. Secondly, and usually more importantly, emotional distress damages. These are the damages for the pain and the suffering that an employee goes through when they're fired due to their pregnancy. They are very real and cannot be minimized and are often the largest component of the case. Third, punitive damages. These are the damages meant to punish the employer for the really egregious, malicious behavior. They're very difficult to win, but when you do, oftentimes they're the largest component of the entire case. Well, how much can you get? If you've got a good case, how much can you get? We employment lawyers hate the how much question. And the reason is this: we don't know. Every case is so dramatically different from one to the next that it's impossible to predict without hearing a whole lot about your facts, to even give an estimate. And most settlement, 99% of cases settle, and those settlements are all confidential, so we don't even have statistics as to what the typical case settles for. But I can tell you this: if you are able to find a good employment lawyer, one who is willing to invest his or her time and money, and most importantly, energy into the case, you're more likely to be satisfied with the financial outcome. I really hope this video has been helpful. Take care.